Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. JACALYN. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. JACALYN at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Happy Friday, or maybe it's happy Saturday, wherever you are in the world. We're thrilled to have you here with us today on USA Global TV and radio, where we have 29 live broadcasts each week. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. I'm the president, founder, and chief listening officer here at our network. And our show today is Authentic Achievements. And joining me is the star of our show, KIM-ADELE'S Randall. Let's welcome her. Hello.
Hey, Dr. JACALYN, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Always lovely to catch up.
Yes, it is. We had quite a show last week, and we have another great topic for this week. But before we get into the villain and hero in our lives, let's have you share a little bit with our audience. As you know, our audience continues to grow, and I think we're now at 37,000 views just on our one channel, our YouTube channel. So please let people know who you are, KIM-ADELE'S Randall, and what's important to you.
Yeah, thank you. So, as you've said, I'm KIM-ADELE'S Randall. I am really passionate about people being able to fulfill their full potential. So I'm a writer and speaker and coach to help people unlock those parts of themselves that get in the way. And that's really what led to the latest book, which I'm in the process of writing, which was around sharing people's stories about how they've been able to overcome things and achieve what they wanted to achieve. And that led us to the show. And you've so graciously allowed me to be part of this channel. And we get to share people's amazing stories of how they've overcome things and gone on to achieve what they wanted to achieve.
And KIM-ADELE, how have you found your experience in interviewing people? Has it impacted you professionally, personally, in terms of growth?
Absolutely. Because you learn something from every message, don't you? From every conversation. You know, I always think every day, well, my nan used to say, every day's a school day. And God bless her, she was right. Because in every day we learn something. If we open our minds, in every conversation, we have a chance. But I live the most blessed life. I get to listen to people's stories every day. And it's really helped me to channel. I find myself being, as we all are, we leap to judgment. People say something and we immediately give it a label. We're like, we either go, I agree, I disagree, I think that's right, I think that's wrong. And what I've really learned since interviewing more people is, instead of deciding that that's right or wrong, or giving my opinion of it, I actually just seek to be curious, to understand a little bit more. So it's like, oh, that's really interesting. I've never thought of that before. Tell me more. And even if at the end of the day, I still don't change my view on what I thought worked or didn't work, what I do is I learn something. So I learn perhaps a different perspective, a different way of thinking about something, a different approach that I hadn't got before. And so I'm finding I'm growing as a person, and hopefully growing as an interviewer, with every single interaction.
And that's so important, that the fact that not only are you giving people a safe space to share their story, but you are fully present and listening, and it's helping you grow as a person as well.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Because I think it's how we grow, isn't it? If we look at everything and say, actually, everything gives us a chance to develop who we are, to change our perspective, to think of something new, or to just feel more confident with what we already know. And because sometimes you're like, you say somebody else will say it, and you're like, oh, that's what I thought. And that makes me feel a bit better, because if they think it too, then maybe that's an extra proof point.
Agreed. I think a key learning for me on this platform has been meeting people from all over the world and realizing that it doesn't matter where we live or what we stand for, we really have so much in common. It doesn't matter what country you live in or how old you are. And it's funny when I'm interviewing various people and they'll say something to me and I'll be like, wow, you're in Africa and you thought that? And that's the same thing that I thought. It's just kind of been an eye-opening experience, because although I traveled quite a bit in my corporate career, I definitely would not say I was worldly by any means. And I feel like now today that I have a much greater understanding of various cultures and people and issues. What are your thoughts about that, KIM-ADELE?
I think you're right. I think and it's fascinating, isn't it, to look at the differences in culture, in approach, because I think some of our misunderstandings come from a cultural piece. I remember many years ago dealing with a boss of mine who was Danish. And for the English, we're dreadfully, dreadfully polite, and therefore we faff around and we go round and round the circle trying to get to give any feedback. But actually, when in the Danish culture, they're just very direct and to the point. So feedback, whether good or bad, is like it's just delivered as is. There's no emotion to it. Now, that was really hard to receive to start off with, because I was like, this person really doesn't like me. I'm not very good at all. They're finding this really hard. Whereas in fact, it was just culturally, we were very different. They weren't trying to be offensive or rude. They were just being honest. But it really helped to open my understanding of the difference, so that I was better able to interact with them.
Great points. Thank you, KIM-ADELE. And I see our guest is backstage, Stephen. We're going to be welcoming him. There's a welcome message there in the private chat for you, Stephen, and we'll be bringing you out shortly. So, KIM-ADELE, just a quick mention of something that we were discussing last week, and then we'll bring in our guest. We were talking about resilience last week. What would you say were some of the key takeaways that you had from the lively discussion you and I had?
Oh, it was a fascinating discussion, and I learned so much. And I think, I think for me, one of the things that kind of really came out, and you brought it up so eloquently in the way that you described when you've been a personal trainer, fitness instructor, and it was the fact that you might not ever have been able to do you did it much better than I'm going to. The one where you have to rest on your arms and lift, you weren't going to be able to jump up on it. But what you did was you found ways to get to be able to use that machine and then get really good at it. So I think it was that piece around always looking for an alternative, looking for a way around, looking at what you can do, not what you can't do. So yes, we were doing it on the gym equipment, but when I reflected, that's basically how I got through most of the challenges in my life, was to look at them and go, I can't deal with that bit, but maybe I could just do something with this part, and if I just focus on that. And I love a quote, as you know, and you can get your quotes from anywhere, but I like and for me, the one that I remember that really resonated with me, and it comes from Frozen 2, and it was just take the next right step. When you can't work out how to solve the problem, if you can see a step that is right, even if it seems really insignificant, just take it. Because keep taking those little seemingly insignificant steps, we change our vantage point, and then we find a way of either resolving the issue, or we suddenly look back and see how far we've come.
Yeah, great points, KIM-ADELE. And just to close that out, I just want to be honest with our audience. I told you last week when we were talking about fitness that I had a personal challenge, which was to do a 20-minute straight arm plank. And I did that last week on Thursday. But then I have to tell you, as of Friday and up until yesterday, I was not feeling very well in my core area. I actually feel like I tore something. So the reason I bring this up is that it's great to have goals, and sometimes they need to be reasonable. I was thinking I'd go to a 25-minute plank, and after that I thought, no, I really pushed my body a little bit too much. I'll stay with the 20-minute plank, as going down in the history books for me at 59 and a half. So KIM-ADELE, it was such a fun conversation that I really appreciate you. So thank you. Would you like to share with our audience about our special guest who's backstage and how you connected and what you think he's going to be sharing with us today?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're being joined by one of my connections on LinkedIn, and he actually popped in to my feed this week because he's got an amazing thing that he's starting to do, or championing as doing, as a mark of respect to Her Majesty the Queen, who we have the funeral for on Monday. But I loved the idea because, and I will let Stephen come out and share it with you because he'll do it so much more eloquently than I will. But actually, for me, what I liked was not just the permanence of that remembrance, but the fact that actually it was going to do good for the environment as well. So it's a real privilege to have Stephen on with us today to share with us about how he wants to champion making a change in the world.
Fantastic. So without any further ado, let us welcome Stephen Fern, Chairman, ARC 2030. Welcome, Stephen.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
It's nice to have you with us. So where are you joining us from today?
Jersey, but the old Jersey, not the New Jersey. So this is a little island off the coast of France, which was the backstory to New Jersey is the King of England, once running away from the French, stopped here in the island. And as a gift to one of the manor house owners here, he gave him a chunk of America called New Jersey.
Thank you for that history. I think it's so funny because I'm actually in New Jersey right now.
Okay. And my kids have spent much of their life on vacation saying to Americans, no, not New Jersey, Jersey. It's very different.
It is very different. I worked in Jersey for a while, and you're right, they couldn't be further apart, could they?
How would you describe Jersey for people like me who have not been there?
It's a tiny little island, 9 miles by 5, very beautiful. It's a thriving economy off the back of a big finance industry, and it's an escape for many people in the United Kingdom who want safety, security, and living on a beautiful island, but still very accessible into London.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I'd love to know a little bit more about ARC 2030 for our friends listening on the radio. Can you share more about what you do there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for my sins, I was originally a lawyer back in the 1980s, and left the profession at the end of the 80s, set up my own business, and at the end of the 90s, I sold that business. And I started a think tank for some of the world's richest families, essentially trying to get families to understand how wealth could be used in a very positive way, a little bit like the Patagonia announcement we've seen this week, which has inspired so many people to say such great things. It's about aligning purpose with our energy and our fulfillment, doing something we feel passionate about with the skills that we've got. And so we've been doing that for nearly 20 odd years. 4 years ago, I was actually in Sweden, and the UN said, we have 12 years to save the planet. And that was really my own epiphany, thinking I spent 30 years building this enormous network of power, business owning families, politicians, and just a black book to die for, really, which we'd already used for a lot of great things, a lot of purpose, but none greater than saving the planet. So we started on a mission, which we obviously called the ARC. The decade that we have to save the planet is 10 years, so it's 2030 is the deadline. And the idea was to think not what can we do, but what do we have to do to reverse the destruction of the planet that we've inflicted over the last 220 years since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution? And how do we stop destroying the planet in the future? And that is ARC 2030. So it's thinking on really a truly global scale. Where do we get $1 trillion from? How do we go out and regenerate the 500 million hectares of landscapes that have been destroyed by mankind over the last, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution? And how do we engage 1 billion people worldwide to do things better? And it was really that latter program, what we call the Global Village, where we take simple ideas which can be replicated 1 million or 1 billion times over. And a simple idea replicated 1 billion times over, of course, has a huge impact.
Wow. Absolutely.
Amazing. We talk about this so often on this platform. How can each and every one of us make a difference? Do you find in the work that you're doing that most people are kind of surprised that we are where we are, or they're kind of like, well, it's someone else's problem. It's for the other generations. I'm just going to enjoy myself while I'm here. What have you been finding?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is we've spent much of the last 20 years at least hearing how bad things are. And it was really that kind of thing that made me sit up 4 years ago. It was kind of like when you look at when somebody leaves a sock in the middle of the sitting room floor and you're looking at the kids thinking, can you pick up the sock? And nobody does. And at some point you get up and you do it. And we need lots of people to get up and do it. We're not picking up the sock, but we're actually thinking more, not just looking around thinking, who's going to do that? But what can I do? And to be fair, I think an awful lot of people. I mean, this world is full of amazing people. And unfortunately, we typically only hear about the negative. We hear about the bad people and the things that they've done wrong. And we don't really hear how lovely people are and how amazing communities can be and everything else that goes with it. To a certain extent, we've lost a sense of community globally. And we've lost a sense of understanding that life isn't just about taking what we can. It is about giving. And it's about understanding how amazing it feels to give, whether that's time, energy, money, or anything else, whatever it is that we've got. And capitalism has taken us to a model which is really just brutalize the planet. We have for 220 years, if we see it, we take it, and we don't think of the consequences. So whether it's destroying entire populations of bisons across North America, or plundering Africa for its its rich mineral resources, all of these things have just been based on neoliberal economics, i.e. just whatever makes us money we'll do. And that includes how we treat people. And the opposite to that isn't communism. And this is a really, really interesting thing. Politics has kind of taught us that you're either, free liberal market economics, let the dollar, let the dollar decide how things happen. And if you don't like that, then you're all a communist. No, it's not. It's about a caring capitalism, where instead of just thinking about shareholders and putting money into the hands of people who typically have got lots of it, it's actually about taking a look at all the stakeholders around you and actually caring and thinking about those stakeholders, whether that's the planet, biodiversity, how we use water, and certainly how we treat people and all of our employees and workers. So it's about a different sort of mindset. And the idea is to get people to understand that if we can actually shift our mindset, most of us actually agree with that concept of how we treat people reflects on us. And it feels good to treat the world well. It feels good to treat people well. And, we shouldn't necessarily be here just saying whatever it does, if it makes me money, I'm going to do it. We can make a lot of money by being kind, caring, and loving people. So it's all about bringing all these things together, but enabling people to take action. And that really is the bit that we felt was missing. Lots of people want to do it, but they don't know what to do. What the Global Village does is over 4 years, we've assembled people from all over the world who've been looking at each of these elements for years and brought them all together into one little place, the Global Village, where people can come together and they can see as a community what they can actually do, what they can do to make this world a better place. And it's absolutely not about just carbon in the sky or temperatures or floods or anything else. It's about understanding. We use a phrase, one body, one life, one planet. They're all interconnected. We need to learn to love all of them. What we put in our body, what we eat, the way that affects our physical health and our mental health. That's the one body, one life, the people around us, the people we interconnect with, the biodiversity we interconnect with, the ability to go out and connect with nature. And one planet, all these things are actually interconnected. So one body, one life, one planet, we need to look after all of them. And it's about giving people ideas as to what that actually means. And the program relating to the Queen is a great example of that.
Absolutely brilliant. Everything you shared. It's sort of like each and every one of us having this awakening and this call to action to do something. And I share with you, I'm in New Jersey. I'm actually on an island. And of course, we're surrounded by water. And just looking around at the wetlands or the beach and the dunes, there's been such a change. And you look in the birds, the number of birds, the types of birds that are here now versus how many and what types were here before. It's all changed. And I just have to look out the window and go, it's real. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, you have to give people hope that we can do this. I don't get out of bed in the morning and go and play basketball because I'm 5'8". I know I'm never going to be a pro basketball player. It's just not going to happen. I wouldn't have a hope, so I don't even try. The same is true with the climate. If you're looking at this thinking, I can go out and plant 1 million trees, and the reality is that 1 million trees over their lifetime will only help reverse the carbon we've pumped into the atmosphere since this conversation began. It's meaningless. So people feel, why should it matter? What difference can it make? And the idea behind the Queen is to take, it's a great example of this. It's not necessarily always about asking people for money either. And I think that's really important. Anybody knows that we can phone somebody up and say, plant a tree, $25, plant a tree, and it's a memorial to the Queen. So it's about engaging people, engaging families, engaging communities. But do this as a school, do this as a group of employees, as a company, as a business. Do this as a family. When you go out for a walk at this time of year in the Northern Hemisphere, we are surrounded by trees that are dropping their seeds. In England, that can be acorns, it can be conkers, it can be chestnuts, it can be horse chestnuts. But equally in our fruit bowl, we've got apples and oranges and pears. And the reality is that we've almost forgotten that every single one of those can grow into a tree. If I go and stand under my local oak tree now, I posted a video on LinkedIn the other day, you can actually hear the acorns dropping. And underneath that tree, there's probably going to be 10,000 acorns. One tree, 10,000 acorns. The reality is, as nature works this way, 99.9% of those will never grow into an oak tree. So they just get sort of decomposed into the ground, which is fantastic. Carbon sequestration in action. But on your walk, why don't you just pick one up? Take it home, put it into some soil with water, put it somewhere cold, interestingly enough, not in a greenhouse, put it somewhere cold, and in about 3 or 4 weeks, you'll start to see it sprout. And then you can put it into a little pot of soil. Over the next 3 years, you've got a little sapling of an oak tree or a conker tree or a chestnut tree or whatever it is, a spruce, a pine, something. And then in 3 years' time, just go and plant it. And when you go and pick up that acorn or conker or whatever nut it is that you put into some soil, just take a photograph of it, a little hashtag, the Queen's Forest. And then once a year, to commemorate the Queen's life on the day of her funeral, we can basically do the same. We can take a photograph of our little sapling and go hashtag the Queen's Forest. In 3 years, when we go and plant it somewhere, that could be in our garden, it could be on our walk. People often say to me, oh, do you need permission? Does nature get permission to when an acorn lands somewhere and grows a tree? Of course it doesn't. Acorns and trees grow all over the place in hedgerows and what. You don't need permission. It's good to get permission if you're going to, go and stick in public land in the middle of a park and do it. But there's millions of places just on your walk. We call it wild farming. Just go and just plant that little sapling somewhere and just watch it grow. Every year we can do that. And I just thought, it's a great example of how Global Village could work, because if we can get people to spread the word and individuals around, in Britain, the Commonwealth, around the world who respected the Queen and everything she did in the life of service, doesn't cost $1. Go for a walk this weekend, go for a walk on the day of the funeral on Monday, go for a walk next week, and just everybody just pick up one acorn, seed, nut, whatever. If you can't do that, you're in a city and you don't get access to that, slice an apple in half. Just get a little apple pip out, put it in some soil, some water, and just watch it grow. And then one day, just go and plant it somewhere. Imagine the impact that could have if we get the word out. Now, it doesn't, it's not critical that happens this time this week, because we can expand on the concept throughout the year, and then next year really get the word out, because this was obviously quite a last minute thing. It was like, wow, how can we do something? And in many respects, what we're saying here, it not only reflects our desire perhaps to do something for the Queen, but not know what to do. It also is about nature. We want to do something, but we don't know what to do. This brings them together, this amazing collision that we can have 1 billion trees around the world just planted, And we can watch that kind of global forest grow every year for the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years. And the quote that is often used here, true wealth is the person who plants a tree, whose shade they will never sit under. And it's absolutely true. You're doing it not for you. By the time this is a huge tree, I won't be around, but my children and my grandchildren will be. So that is the idea, the Queen's Forest.
I love it.
I love that. What was that quote? Can you share that again, please?
Yeah, true wealth. It actually, the original quote has the word man. But true wealth comes to the man who plants a tree whose shade he will never sit under. And it's about saying you'll do something which you will personally never benefit from. And it's absolutely right. It's a beautiful analogy.
It is. What I loved about this when I first heard about it was, one, it's helping us also, to your point, it's helping us have an idea of what to do, because very often we don't do something because we don't know what to do. We're not sure how it's going to help. But I also love the fact that it's giving us an opportunity to go and create memories of our own. Without I was telling my little girl about it. She's very excited. We're going with some friends to do it together. And I was like, that's going to be something we remember for life, and show her that just how things grow and how we make a difference. And that whole piece around kindness. And it struck me, because I love a quote myself. It reminded me of the quote that it was the Chinese that say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. It's that piece around saying, do it now, because actually, yes, it would have been better if we did it 20 years ago, but let's not wait another 20 years to go. Well, imagine if we'd done it then.
And I think there is an amazing element about what we need to do as a society. And perhaps the most powerful evocation of that I was actually in New York to present the ARC mission at the Climate Summit at the UN 3 years ago. In fact, pretty much 3 years ago this week. And on one of the evenings, there was a special gathering at Bryant Square of indigenous peoples, and they walked together as a group, 27 tribes from around the world. And we went into the theatre, and there was an award ceremony, listening to these amazing stories of people from around the world whose lives were being destroyed by climate change. And they're really at the front end of something that is absolutely not of their making. And the beginning, there was a speech, the entrance speech, welcoming speech from a young lady, I think from the Amazon. She said, the rivers are our blood, the land is our mother, the tree is our father. And I just thought, wow, it's a beautiful way of understanding that connectedness they had with nature. Then I spent 2 hours listening to these stories, people whose lives are so inextricably linked with nature. And then I walk out into central Midtown Manhattan on a September evening, blistering hot, millions of people, traffic, noise, and of course, okay, there's a little square of green there and some trees, but you could not be more disconnected from nature than being in central Midtown Manhattan. And I just thought, wow, what a dichotomy. And this really tells us where life has taken us, where society has taken us. We've gone from a situation where we lived on the land, we valued land, and there was rural economics, to the point where, for most people, they have to go and live in a city to exist. And then, the food for 12 million or 15 million people has to be shipped into that city in a way that's hyper efficient, which means it's processed and plastic covered and frozen and everything else. And everything about it is dysfunctional. And we basically abused the land and the owners of the land and the farmers to the point where, a typical farmer's life is pretty damn desperate, because there's no economics in what they're doing, because we've screwed every last dollar out of them to get it into the city centres as cheap as possible. And yet in our city centres, 99% of people who live in city centres, they're not the 1% who've got the money to really enjoy a city. They exist. And part of, I think, what we've got to do is understand we need to reconnect with nature. And that comes from changing the whole value systems of what we actually appreciate. And COVID, I think, is actually quite interesting there, in that it made us appreciate perhaps free time. it made us appreciate we didn't need to travel all around the world to enjoy ourselves. We could effectively get out into the country and sort of see people. We actually had time for our family and our friends, and we also understood that really, when it came down to it, there weren't that many things that really mattered to us. If we had electricity, possibly if we had the internet, we had food, and we had loo roll. They were almost like the fundamentals of city life. If I can get my hands on those, I can survive. All of the other stuff, of course, became an irrelevance. You didn't really need a new Rolex or a new car or a new. None of that is need. And so this is all about understanding value systems and understanding what really matters in order for us to reset how this planet lives. And I absolutely believe that we can create a global movement of people that care, that want to do more and want to live in communities that care about themselves and each other. And it's just a case of finding that mechanism to make it happen. And there are millions of initiatives around the world that are doing lots of amazing projects and ideas. And the idea of the ARC is to actually sort of bring it into one that the world can look at and say, this is it, we can do this, and we can do it together, and feel that the minor things, the tiny little things I'm doing, planting one acorn, not going to make much difference. But if I know 1 million people are doing it, or 1 billion people are doing it, wow. That's why the hashtag is important. Because if you and I go and do this and do it alone, it has the same impact. But what you're trying to do is to understand how we can perhaps use technology and social media to really escalate the scale and pace at which we get things done.
There's so much that we could peel back from what you just said. One comment I have is my father passed away 10 years ago, and in the community where we live in Florida, we planted a tree. And at the time, it seemed like, all of us in the community, we were around the planting, and now 10 years later, it's a big tree. So, and I think about how that tree is giving life to other entities, and what a beautiful thing it is. At the time, it seemed like, okay, Dad's gone, we're planting a tree. But now I can look at it and say, wow, that was a wonderful gesture and I can see how it can just continue if each and every one of us does our part. We talk a lot also on this planet, this chapter in this network here, about saving the honeybees and milkweed for the monarch butterflies. And I think that just the fact that you're here, you've such a huge following on LinkedIn. It's just one person at a time turning on that that light bulb and saying, hey, wow, I can do something, let me get involved. What's the first step?
Absolutely. And I think just going back to that, I think the beauty of what you're doing with Global Village, you take that one concept, like when somebody dies, we'll plant a tree. Go and look at a city centre graveyard. Okay, it's not the most sort of, I love the fascination of looking at gravestones and things, but it's concrete. It's a big slab of granite or marble. It's stones, everything else. Imagine if instead of that, there was a forest, not of 1,000 grave slabs, 1,000 trees. And all they need is a little marker with the person's name on in memory. And you have something there that is incredibly powerful. I'm trying to say something without crying. My eldest daughter died, and we have a little place where we planted a tree in the churchyard instead of a grave. I couldn't stand the idea of a grave. And yeah, there are moments where you just go and sit next to that tree and think, when you need a bit of peace and quiet and tranquility. So much nicer as a concept than actually just, a city centre graveyard full of slabs of concrete, which can be cold and heartless. And that forest is just going to grow and grow and grow. And so there are amazing initiatives, but people just need to understand how to do those things, or what to do, how to get them going. And the whole point of the Global Village is it's globalization, localization. So globalization is the idea that there are 21 themes of things that any community in the world can do. You take each of those 21 themes, and as a community, that could be a block of flats, it could be a street, it could be a suburb, it could be a city. And you take that and you say, how is that going to work here for us? And it's going to work very differently if it's a sort of degraded agricultural landscape in Africa compared with if it's downtown Manhattan. But the bottom line is, it's about bringing the community together to make it happen. Understand how you manage and control that framework of the community, and then sharing these ideas and inspirations in the same way that we go into buildings for a purpose. The village has got 21 kind of buildings in a virtual sense, where you can go in and say, how do we use the coffee shop as a community to help this community be a better, healthier, happier, more sustainable community. And that's what this is about. It's about handing that control back to everybody and saying you can do something as an individual, as a neighborhood, whatever your community is, however you define your community, school, workplace, whatever. Mobilize it, understand what you can do, but also understand you're part of this massive global movement of people that care. That's really cool.
It's really cool. Because as human beings, we want to be connected, don't we? So what you're doing is helping people connect in little communities, but be part of a bigger community. And to your point, that localized strategy of saying, you know, how it will show up will look differently in each of those individual communities, but you're all part of a bigger movement, a bigger connection, a bigger opportunity. Yeah. To
40% of adults in the United Kingdom live alone. I mean, when I'm away traveling, you know, I hate people say, "Oh, you're in a lovely hotel by yourself." I'm going, "Yeah, I hate it. I go to bed at 8 o'clock and it's like watching, you know, useless TV. I hate it." And 40% of people are living like that for mental health. I mean, what is that actually doing to us? And yet, in a way, COVID taught us you can go and sit on the street and people weren't allowed to connect, but they sat talking to each other across the street and actually got to know who their damn neighbours were. Yeah. Wow, shock. They're not people who are going to kill me just because I'm saying hello. And yeah, we've got to reconnect with that. It is insane to think that the vast majority of the planet are all psychopathic murderers. They're just not. There are some out there, don't get me wrong. But you know, the reality is the vast majority of the planet are really nice people. In their various guises, we all have our faults and foibles, but they're really nice people. And we just want to connect. We are human, sociable beings that need that connection. And then when you start to build that idea of community and togetherness and sense of belonging, just everything starts to fit in. What can we do better? How can we eat better? How can we cook better? How can we teach each other? How can we share resources so that if we live in a suburban row with 100 lawns, we don't need 100 lawnmowers. We need 5 lawnmowers, and we just take it in turns using them. That cuts down the number of lawnmowers needed from 100 down to 5. Yeah, these are not rocket science ideas, but when you say them, one of my common phrases is I quite often say to people, the problem with common sense is it's not that common, and it, you know, a lot of these ideas are just, to me, common sense. They're not rocket science, but people kind of go, "Oh, that's a great idea," and yeah, it's not a great idea. It's blindingly obvious. You know, if you've got people in your community you can sew, once every month get together with everybody who needs stuff sewing and just allow them to sew your, you know, a patch in your jeans or a patch on your jumper or whatever it happens to be. There are retired people who know how to fix electric lights or how to fix lawnmowers or drills or whatever, and they sit on their own at home doing nothing. Give them a space where they can go and sort of talk to people and say, "Yeah, I'll help you fix this. I'll help you repair that." So it's just about understanding what works for your community. And a kind of repair shop in central New York is going to be very different than a repair shop in Finland or in India somewhere in sort of rural economy. Of course it is. It doesn't matter. The concept, if you throw the concept into people and say, work with this at a community level, people can work it out. You know, we've got intelligence, we've got motivation, we've got a passion to actually do things better, and we just need to unlock it.
So well said. And you know, there are things that all of us can do. I'll give an example of myself. During the pandemic, I got my meditation certification, and I made a commitment that I will not kill anything. So I've always been afraid of bugs. I would see a bug, I would kill it. Nope, bugs, wherever they are. I'm like, "Hello, spider, nice to see you. Please just stay over there." Whatever it is. I don't use hairspray anymore because it's in an aerosol. I don't use bug spray. I don't use anything that could damage the planet. I turn the water off in between brushing my teeth. I turn all the lights off in between shows. Like, there are things that we can all do, but it just takes awareness and then an effort to make that commitment.
Absolutely. And we talk about just marginal gains. You know, it's if we cannot let, another phrase, we cannot let perfection stand in the way of progress. So if you sit here thinking, in order for this to work, we've all got to become off-grid vegans, we're not going to get anywhere. What we have to do is get 5 billion people or 6 billion people perhaps who eat meat to not eat meat 7 days a week, make it 6 days a week, maybe 5 days a week, maybe 4 days a week. And then you start looking at where is the sourcing of the meat. If you're going to eat meat, make sure it's local and reared humanely and preferably organic and all those sort of good things. So it's about quality, not quantity. But second, you've got to educate people and guide people. If I say to my parents, don't eat meat on Sunday, they would literally prepare a Sunday roast and just take the chicken leg off it. You're not thinking about how we create lovely, beautiful meals where meat isn't the focus and we've just removed the meat. So it's about understanding that you've not only got to say to people what we can do to make a marginal gain and explain the marginal gain to that movement if it's done at scale, but also guide them as to how to make that move, how to make that change. And some things it's just a case of saying you can do this. Even the idea of planting an acorn, picking an acorn up, you actually need to say to people, take it home, put it in a cup of soil with some water, preferably somewhere cold. And that gives them the reassurance they need to think, that's okay, that's what I need to do. If you just say, pick up an acorn and make an oak tree, people will go, I don't know how. Of course, people know how to Google and YouTube. You can Google and YouTube anything. But it's just making those steps not only intelligible, understand the global impact if it happens, explain what to do, and then that idea of and share, because we need this community, this messaging to go out all over the world. And when people on LinkedIn say to me, what can I do to help? I say, the most important thing you can do is to ask everybody in your community to join in, because that's the greatest impact we can have at this stage. We've done all the background work explaining, which will explain to people what to do. The most important thing now is to take an audience of 2 million views a week to 50 million views a week to 100 million views a week. Because when we have that scale of education and information going out in the world, we will hit more people who are willing to make a change. We'll be able to guide more people to make those changes. We'll have the greatest impact. So I don't necessarily think it's about the individual tasks. It's about building the community of people who care.
Amazing.
Brilliant. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for being here. And I know we have to have you come back because we're just getting started. So we have another show coming up right after this. But Stephen, I'm going to spotlight you. And for people who can't read the banner, they're on the radio or later on a podcast platform, how can people reach out to you and who would you like to contact you?
Yeah, the easy, if you want to find out more, ARC, think of Noah, ARC 2030, it's pretty easy to remember. ARC2030.org gives you more information about what we're doing. ARC2030.com is the community platform where you can come in and start to learn about all these things that you can do. And that will build up over the next 3 to 6 months as we tell the world we're ready to go. We've been 4 years building the toolkits, and now we're ready to build the community and bring them to start taking action at scale. So go to ARC 2030. But at the moment, the biggest network we have is on LinkedIn. Look me up on LinkedIn, Stephen Fern on LinkedIn. Join the community. You'll hear lots of things on a daily basis from me, explaining what you can do, how you can do it, some of the thought processes and challenges that we need people to really think about. So that's probably the preferred route at the moment.
Thank you so much. I've already reached out to you, and we'll be updating the promotions on all the platforms with your contact information later this afternoon.
Great. Thank you very much for having me on the program. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And I look forward to chatting again really, really soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye for now. KIM-ADELE, thank you so much for bringing Stephen to the platform. That was really very valuable information that he shared.
Amazing, isn't he? And when I saw it, and it was bless his heart. So anybody that saw at the very start, I was kind of looking over here. We were desperately trying to connect because the link hadn't worked beforehand. So forgive me if anybody thought that I wasn't being fully committed to the conversation at the very beginning. It was purely because Stephen was trying to connect in so he could come along. But I just thought it was so important that we got him here if he was able to, because what an amazing journey that he is championing that we can all be part of. And I just love that it includes us going out and getting out into nature, doing things with our family, creating memories, and also being part of something bigger, being part of something that leaves a legacy, not just for us, but for the people that will never meet. And that just felt like too good an opportunity not to share.
Well done, Kim-Adele. Thank you so much. And can you please share with our audience the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, of course. So if anyone would like to get in touch with me, probably the best way is to just email me. So it's kim@kimadelerandall.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn as Kim-Adele Randall, and on most of social media as Kim-Adele10. Or if you want to find out more about what we're doing with Authentic Achievements, it's www.authenticachievements.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We are going to sign off for now. Our next show is coming up, The Power of Etiquette and Manners, and we've got quite a show for you. We are going to be discussing how afternoon tea can save the world. So join us for that with Mr. Philip Sykes, and we have, I think, 9 guests coming on this show, so it should be a lot of fun. So that's all for now. We'll be back in less than 15 minutes. Kim-Adele, I'll see you next week.
See you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.